So far we have seen two types of ratios. The first one is the liquidity ratio. The second one is the long-term proprietary ratio. One is the liquidity ratio, first type. Ratios under which the first type is current ratio, which is equal to current assets by current liabilities. Then the second ratio is quick ratio, which is equal to quick assets by current liabilities. This is the first type. Second type is long-term proprietary ratio, and under this the subheadings are long-term solvency ratios. This is long-term solvency ratios. Under this, we have seen three types. The first type is debt equity ratio. Which we can find using the formula long-term debt divided by shareholders' fund. Then second type is proprietary ratio. The proprietary ratio is equal to shareholders' fund by total assets. Third one is capital gearing ratio. Capital gearing ratio which is equal to, how this ratio can be found out? Funds bearing fixed interest or dividend. Funds bearing fixed interest or fixed dividend, whole divided by equity shareholders fund. These are the 5 ratios we have seen so far. Now we are going to see illustration 7. What is given in illustration 7? In illustration 7, we are supposed to find the 3 ratios. That is debt equity ratio, and it is given there. First one, debt equity ratio. Second one is the proprietary ratio. Third one is capital gearing ratio. This one. These are the three types of ratios asked. For this we have seen already long-term debts. What is the formula for this? We have seen long-term debts by shareholders fund. What are the long-term debts? Long-term debts equal to, what are they given in the problem 7? Long-term debts are only and one item, that long-term borrowings it is given. That is long-term borrowings. This is the only and one item. Otherwise it is given in the bracket 9% debenture. So the amount of debenture is 4 lakhs. In the formula, numerator is long-term debts, that what we have found out. See, there are many items given in the problem number 7, in the session number 7, in the problem, in the question itself. Which one is the long-term debt? That we should decide. Long-term debts. This debenture is the only long-term debts from the list of items given. Okay. Then, and also the long-term debts are liabilities. Debt means current. So, on liability side only we should look at. Then current liabilities, short-term borrowings are given. But here it is long-term borrowing and therefore only debenture. Okay. Then denominator, shareholders fund. Shareholders fund. What are the items of shareholders fund? Any type of shares plus reserve and surplus. Any type of shares. What are the different types of shares given here? Equity share capital plus preference share capital plus reserves and surplus. These are the three items what we must keep it in mind. What are the amounts for it? Equity share capital 1,50,000 plus preference share capital 2 lakhs plus reserves and surplus 1,50,000. If you find the total of these three items, it will come to 5 lakhs. So what we must do? As soon as we go through the problem, we will come to know for what question we should answer. Here, the first question is find the debt-equity ratio. So for debt-equity ratio, what is the formula? Long-term debts by shareholders fund. So the numerator long-term debts must be found out separately, and the denominator shareholders fund must be found separately. Then you can write the formula debt-equity ratio is equal to long-term debts, total long-term or long-term debts divided by shareholders fund. Shareholders fund. Long-term debts 4 lakhs by shareholders fund 5 lakhs, and this is equal to, put 1 for the denominator, then you write 4 by 5, which is equal to, if you divide 4 by 5, no 5 in 4, 0, put the 0, put the point, 8 5s are 40. Therefore, this is 0.8 by 1, which is equal to 0.8 is to 1. This is the ratio. I told you in the other class, you should remember very easily that the denominator must be 1 always in any type of ratio. Whether it is liquidity ratio or long-term solvency ratio, whatever it is, the denominator must be 1. So, whatever the number you have in the denominator, you put 1 there, then you write the fraction as it is in the numerator. What does it mean actually mathematically? You are dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 5. That is 4 by 5, here 5 by 5, 1. Instead you can go in an easy way. What? Put 1 for the denominator, then you write the entire fraction in the numerator, 4 by 5. If it is 3 by 5, you write 3 by 5 in the numerator. Okay, 1, then here divide 4 by 5, it is 0.8, therefore 0.8 is to 1. Then the second ratio. What is proprietary ratio? Proprietary ratio is equal to shareholders fund divided by shareholders fund divided by total assets. So what we must do now, first find the value for numerator separately, then denominator separately, then you can substitute the values in the formula to find the ratio. Okay, the numerator is shareholders fund, that what we have done already. So what you will have to do? Shareholders fund is equal to equity share capital plus preference share capital plus reserves and surplus. Reserves and surplus, which is equal to the same amount, 1,50,000 plus 2 lakhs plus 1,50,000 for these 3 items, which comes to the total of 5 lakhs. This is shareholders fund. Then what about total assets? Total assets is the denominator. Total assets Luckily, in the problem itself, the total asset value is given as 10 lakhs. You can find in the book, illustration number 7. Assets, non-current assets, current assets, and these two items are given, and totally, to your luck, the total itself is given in the problem. Therefore, you need not add all the items, that is, fixed assets, inventories, trade receivables, cash and cash equivalents, other current assets, expenses in advance. So, all these are the 1, 2, 1 plus 3, 4, 5 items. You need not write here and found the total like this, because the total assets itself is given in the book. So, you can write simply total assets 10 lakhs. Now you can substitute the values here. Shareholders fund 5 lakhs whole divided by total assets 10 lakhs. If you simplify this, you will get 1 by 2. Then for 2 you will put 1 here. This 1 by 2 will be to the numerator. You write this 1 by 2 in the numerator, by 1 you write. 1 by 2 is nothing but 0.5, I told you in the previous class, which is equal to 0.5 is to 1. This is 0.5 is to 1. So, the second ratio has been found out now. The third one is capital gearing ratio. The third one is capital gearing ratio. For this, what is the formula? You can write the formula. Capital gearing ratio is equal to funds bearing fixed interest or fixed dividend whole divided by equity shareholders fund, equity shareholders fund. Funds bearing fixed interest and fixed dividend. You can find these two items for which you can get, or any shareholder can get, a fixed interest, for which fixed dividend can be got. Fixed interest can be got for the item given debenture. Fixed dividend can be given for preference shareholders only. For equity shareholders, preference shareholders both have the eligibility to share the dividend from the profit earned by the company. Company earn பண்ண profitல இருந்து இது equity shareholder இருந்தாலும் preference shareholder இருந்தாலும் dividend உண்டு. ஆனா அதுல there is a difference. What it is? For preference shareholders, fixed dividend 6%, 8%, 5% like that. The dividend is given at a fixed rate. Whereas the equity shareholders will get varying dividend because it depends upon the profit earned by the company. கம்பெனி எந்த லாபம் சம்பாதிச்சதோ அதிகமாக சம்பாதிச்சதுன்னா அதிகமாக டிவிடெண்ட் கிடைக்கும் ஈக்விட்டி ஷேர் ஹோல்டர். கம்மியாக ஏர்ன் பண்ணுதுன்னா கம்மியாக கிடைக்கும். அதனால தான் அவங்க the formula itself is very specific. funds bearing fixed interest or fixed dividend. Here, what are the two items? Fixed interest is 9% debenture, that we can find the numerator. Funds bearing fixed interest or fixed dividend. What are the items for this? Fixed interest, debenture, 9% debenture, 9% debenture. Plus 8% preference share, which is equal to 9% debenture value is 4 lakhs, 2 lakhs, 4 lakhs, 8% preference shares, 2 lakhs. So 4 lakhs plus 2 lakhs, which is equal to 6 lakhs. Then denominator, equity shareholders fund equal to equity shares plus reserve and surplus. Equity share, the value of equity shares is 1,50,000. Reserve and surplus also 1,50,000. So totally it is 3 lakhs. So we can substitute the values here. Numerator value 6 lakhs. Denominator value 3 lakhs. If you simplify, 2 3s are 6, 2 by 1, which is equal to 2:1. Because in the denominator itself the 1 is coming already, therefore we can write this as 2:1. This is the third ratio. From these ratios, what you have learned? This is the second type of ratios, I say. In this there are 3 types of ratios: debt-equity ratio, proprietary ratio, and the capital gearing ratio. These are the 3 items. For debt-equity ratio, long term, this first ratio, current ratio, is for short term, whereas the second one is for long term. For long term ratio, solvency ratio, the first one is debt-equity ratio. Here it is long term debts by shareholders fund. Long term debts in the sense need all for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, like that. And under this, only one item is given in this problem, that is long term borrowing is 9% debenture. The company has borrowed or the company has sold away 9% debenture. Then what is the promise made by the company? When these types of shares are issued by the company, what is the promise? Say after 5 years, so much interest will be given, and you can get back the amount, debenture amount, after 5 years, after 10 years. till then, what you can get? You can get 9% interest for the amount you have given to the company. It depends upon the value of debenture. 1 lakh அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டாங்க வச்சுக்கோ, அதில் 9% கொடுக்கணும்னா 9,000 they will give interest. 2 lakhs அப்படின்னா 18,000 they will pay interest. அந்த மாதிரி per every year the interest will be paid. This is, and we can get back the amount from the company what is promised by the company after the period what is promised by the company. So this is a 5-year debenture. Only after 5 years we can get back the amount. If it is a 10 years debenture, after 10 years only we can get back the amount. Till then, every year we can get the interest at the rate mentioned in the debenture certificate. Debenture certificate. Debenture is a certificate. Okay, right. Then next one, shareholders fund. The name itself indicates share. What are the different types of shares? Equity shares, preference shares. Only there are 2 types of shares. With that, what you can do, you can add a reserve and surplus. இது ஒரு assistant மாதிரி reserve and surplus. If it is shareholders fund, different types of shares plus the reserve and surplus. Here, these 2 types of shares are given, reserve and surplus, you add, then divide the numerator by the denominator, we have got the answer. And in all these, you should remember one thing, what you should remember, the denominator must be 1, and therefore put 1 in the denominator and write the other number in the numerator as a fraction, and divide the numerator by denominator, write the answer in the numerator. அப்படியே மேலே இருக்கிற நம்பரை கீழே இருக்கிற நம்பரால் டிவைட் பண்ணி என்ன ஆன்சர் வருதோ அது அப்படியே மேலே போடும். ஸோ திஸ் இஸ் திஸ் ரேஷியோ. தென் செகண்ட் டைப் ஆஃப் ரேஷியோ இஸ் proprietary ratio. You should remember this also. What is this proprietary ratio? Proprietary ratio is equal to shareholders fund by total assets. You can compare, you can correlate the formula. Long-term debts by shareholders fund, this denominator will become the numerator here in the proprietary ratio. Shareholders fund, denominator total assets. This denominator becomes numerator here. The same amount, shareholders fund 5 lakhs, here also shareholders fund, here 5 lakhs, the same amount for the shareholders fund with the numerator. Sir, this we have already calculated. You may have the doubt. Sir, this we have calculated already. Okay, you may ask me a doubt. What? Sir, for the previous one we have found out the shareholders fund here. And why should we write the same thing here? This is the question. Sometimes what they ask, they give the problem, find the proprietary ratio alone under 3 marks. What will you do? So you should write, and that is why what all necessary here for finding out the answer, I have written it separately. So shareholders fund is this different types of shares plus reserves and surplus. This reserves and the surplus is a permanent one. When you find the shareholders fund, different types of shares plus reserves and surplus. Okay. Then total assets, ready hand in the problem itself it is given. Therefore, numerator value 5 lakhs, denominator value 10 lakhs, it is divided. As usual for the denominator put 1, numerator the simplified form of 5 by 10. Even you can write, if you divide 5 by 10, this is 0.5, 1 digit, after 1 digit you put the point 0.5 by 1. Okay, then third one is an important ratio, capital gearing ratio. What all the items which will be helpful to gear the capital gearing ratio, to gear the capital. See, what is the formula for it? Funds bearing fixed interest or fixed dividend. What all the items that will bring fixed interest and fixed dividend? When you look at the term fixed interest, this is meant only for preference shares. Only the preference shares will get fixed dividend, preference shares. Whereas the fixed dividend, the fixed interest is got for debentures. For debentures, fixed interest. For dividend, fixed dividend, it is preference share. And that is why for the numerator, debenture and the preference share, both the amount together comes to 6 lakhs. Then, denominator, equity shareholders fund. That's what I want to tell you in this problem. Equity shareholders fund. If it is a shareholders fund, how we have used here in the denominator, here in the numerator. All types of shares plus reserves and surplus consist of this. Shareholders fund consists of all types of shares plus reserves and surplus. Okay, good. But here it is not given a general term. Not with this it is given, shareholders fund. Here specifically given equity shareholders fund. Therefore, you should take only equity shares. So, equity shares as usual, this reserves and surplus is very common, it is general, and therefore you take both items. Equity share plus reserves and surplus, it comes to 3 lakhs. Therefore, numerator value by denominator value 6 by 3. For 3 you can put 1. If you divide 6 by 3, it is 2. You write the answer here. Therefore, it is equal to 2:1. So, how this question can be answered? As it is, from the following balance sheet, calculate debt equity ratio, proprietary ratio, capital gearing ratio. The 3 questions may be given like that. Or else in simple way, from the following balance sheet, find the long-term solvency ratio. ரொம்ப சுலபமா கேட்டு போயிடுவாங்க. Instead of find debt equity ratio, find the proprietary ratio, find the capital gearing ratio, instead of asking 3 questions, simple question, only 1 question. What? Find the long-term solvency ratio. For that, what you should do? You should remember the 3 ratios: debt equity ratio, proprietary ratio, and the capital gearing ratio, or the 3 ratios coming under long-term solvency ratio. Either debt equity ratio, proprietary ratio, capital gearing ratio கண்டுபிடிங்க, தனித்தனியாகவும் கேட்கலாம். இல்லை ஒரே சிங்கிள் வேர்டா long-term solvency ratio கண்டுபிடின்னு சொல்லிடலாம். In that case, what you should remember, the 3 are coming under long-term solvency ratio. இது 3மே long-term solvency ratioன்னு உனக்கு தெரிஞ்சிருக்கும். அது தெரிஞ்சிருந்தால் மட்டும் போதாது, அதுக்கு என்ன ஃபார்முலா வருதுன்னு தெரிஞ்சிருக்கணும். Then alone you can attend the problem. This may appear under 5 mark questions. Okay.